Hello, everybody.
Hola todas.
It's so different when you're sitting over there than when you're
Es
holding
muy
the
diferente cuando
microphone.
estás sentada y luego cuando estás arriba.
Okay, so my name's Jennifer Rodriguez, and
Mi nombre es Jennifer
I
Rodríguez
forgot there's an interpreter. And I've been attending Faith Pleases God for about a year and a half now.
He estado viniendo a la iglesia por 1 año y medio ahora.
And just to give you a little bit of a backstory,
Te puedo dar una poca de historia.
when I was about 13 years old, there was, I guess you could say, like a light switch that went on in my life, in my brain.
Cuando tenía 13 años de edad, hubo como un switch en mi mente que se prendió.
And I started having these thoughts and these feelings that I couldn't explain.
Y tenía pensamientos y sentía cosas que no podía explicar.
And due to the thoughts and the feelings, I started acting out in repetitious actions and words.
Y con esos pensamientos y emociones comencé a hacer cosas repetidas.
I couldn't explain it, I didn't know what it was, and I literally felt like I was probably the only person in the world going through that.
No lo podía explicar y no podía parar. Sentía como si yo era la única que estaba pasando por esto.
So, forward a few years, I was probably about 17 years old,
Cuando tenía 17 años de edad,
and I discovered what obsessive compulsive disorder was.
y me di cuenta de que era consumpción obsesiva.
And for those of you who don't know what obsessive compulsive disorder is, or OCD,
Si no saben qué es OCD,
what it is you have these thoughts or things happen in your life and you begin to obsess on the thought or feeling.
comienzas a tener obsesión sobre pensamientos y cosas que sientes.
And your brain somehow believes that if you repeat certain actions or certain words, you're fixing yourself.
Y tu mente se cree de que si comienzas a repetir ciertas cosas, tu mente piensa que te estás arreglando tú misma.
So I thought, that's me. I self-diagnosed myself, and I was for a little bit happy because I realized I wasn't the only person in the world going through this.
Yo misma me di el reporte de que eso soy yo y me identifiqué con eso.
And actually, I educated myself over it, and I actually had it under pretty good control.
Me eduqué de eso y lo tenías controlado.
So in 2020, when COVID hit, that's where my problem started.
En 2020, cuando COVID pegó,
Of course, COVID hit, and my boss sent us home to work from home.
cuando COVID pegó, mi mayordomo me mandó a casa para trabajar de casa.
And at first, I thought, this is great. It's a long vacation. I'm enjoying this. I can make my own schedule.
Y pensé, esto es genial. Estoy trabajando de casa, puedo hacer mi propio tiempo.
There was a lot of talk in the news about people with rising cases of mental health issues, and I didn't really understand why they didn't love being at home.
Y había muchas noticias en las noticias sobre gente que estaba teniendo problemas de salud mental. Y yo pensaba, ¿por qué se están quejando? Están en casa.
So, push forward a couple months, we're about August 2020. By then, things had started becoming normal in the sense of we were starting to return back to work.
En agosto 2020 las cosas comenzaron a ponerse normal y regresamos al trabajo.
But we still had social distancing rules.
Y teníamos la regla de distancia.
So we had to be, I work with children, so we had to be in our office with our door closed.
Yo trabajo con niños y teníamos que estar en nuestra oficina con la puerta cerrada.
We couldn't congregate with each other.
No podíamos
We
juntarnos.
couldn't have lunch together.
No podíamos tener lonche juntas.
I was literally alone all day.
Estaba sola todo el día.
Slowly, I started to withdraw out of the fear that was going on in the world.
Me comencé a quitar por todo el miedo en el mundo.
This problem of OCD that I had worked so hard to control was now out of control.
Este problema de OCD, ahora el que lo tenía en control, ahora estaba descontrolado.
And it continued to escalate from 2020 into 2021.
y escaló de 2020 a 2021.
I stopped going to family gatherings where there was a lot of people.
No iba con la familia, sí iba a haber mucha
I
gente.
feared going to the store.
No iba a la tienda.
I was spending a lot of time in my bathtub,
Estaba mucho tiempo en mi bañera.
and my anxiety and depression was just really out of control.
La ansiedad y depresión se descontrolaron.
At this point, my husband had started working overnight.
A este punto, mi esposo comenzó a trabajar en las noches.
So not only was I home alone all day, but now I was home alone all night.
No solamente estaba sola todo el día, ahora también toda la noche.
And I cried pretty much all the time.
Y lloraba todo el
I
tiempo.
cried at work,
En el trabajo,
I cried at home.
en la casa.
Like I said, I spent lots of hours in my bathtub.
Estaba muchas horas en mi bañera.
It was so bad to the point, and my mom's sitting here as my witness. One night I started sending my husband crazy messages that I was gonna hurt myself or harm myself or do something. I was home alone.
Se puso tan mal la cosa de que le comencé a mandar a mi esposo mensajes de que me iba a poner a dañar.
So my husband, being away from me, the only thing he could do was call my mom.
Mi esposo, como él estaba en el trabajo, le llamó a mi mamá.
And it was past midnight. It was about 12:30 in the morning, and my mom rushed over to my apartment and banged on my door.
Era la medianoche y mi mamá llegó a mi casa y tocó en mi puerta.
And we had a mini intervention, but my problem wasn't solved at that point.
Tuvimos una intervención, pero mi problema no se solucionó.
Fast forward a little bit more, in 2021 of June, me and several family members caught COVID.
En junio del 2021, mi familia y yo contractamos COVID
And by then, I was just physically and spiritually dead.
y para entonces yo ya estaba muerta físicamente y espiritualmente.
The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
El enemigo viene a destruir y a matar y a destruir.
He stole my joy.
Él me quitó mi gozo,
He killed me spiritually.
me mató espiritualmente
And at that point, he had pretty much destroyed my life.
y había destruido a ese punto mi vida.
I saw a counselor, I saw a psychiatrist.
Vi a psiquiatras, a consulados.
The psychiatrist prescribed me medication,
El psiquiatra me dio medicina
but I said, no, not for me.
y yo dije, no, para mí no.
For myself, medication wasn't the answer
Para mí, medicamento no era la solución,
because medication had to be my God.
porque medicamento sería mi Dios.
I made that decision that when I recovered from COVID, I was
Tomé una decisión que cuando sanaba de COVID,
going to leave the church I was attending at that time
iba a salirme de la iglesia donde estaba en ese momento
and move to Faith Pleases God,
y a moverme a la iglesia Fe Agrada a Dios.
which that in itself was a little difficult
Y eso era difícil,
because my husband, who's our spiritual leader of our home,
porque mi esposo, como es el líder espiritual de nuestra casa,
was not on board.
no estaba de acuerdo.
But I knew that I needed Jesus, and I knew that I needed something more than I was receiving at
Pero
that time.
yo sabía que necesitaba a Jesús y necesitaba más de lo que estaba recibiendo ese punto.
So we started at Faith Pleases God. Thank God he followed.
Comenzamos a venir a la iglesia Fe Agrada a Dios y gracias a Dios Él comenzó a venir.
At that time, small groups was starting,
Y los grupos pequeños estaban comenzando.
and I love small groups. I met amazing people,
A mí me encantan los grupos pequeños, conocí a mucha gente
and it really made me feel a part of the congregation instead of just attending on a Sunday and being a random number in the crowd.
y me sentía como parte de la congregación, no solo un cuerpo más en medio de gente.
And it was during that time that I learned true salvation.
Y en ese tiempo aprendí que era la salvación verdadera.
I knew of salvation. I had attended church for many years.
Yo conocía de salvación porque he ido a la iglesia por muchos años.
But I think at that point I was so desperate and needing healing that I was hearing it different.
Pero en ese punto estaba tan desesperada porque necesitaba sanidad que lo oí diferente.
I learned that Jesus Christ died on the cross for me.
Aprendí que Jesús murió en la cruz por mí,
so that I didn't have to go through OCD or anxiety or depression.
para que yo no viviera con el OCD, depresión y ansiedad.
That all I had to do was cast them and hand them over to Him.
Que lo tenía que agarrar y dárselos a Él.
And that's how I started to take control.
Y así comencé a tomar control.
I stopped crying.
Paré de llorar,
I stopped spending time in my shower.
de estar en la bañera.
I started going to family functions.
Comencé a ir a ver a familia.
And most recently, I've started slowly getting back into social media.
Y más recientemente comencé a meterme en los medios sociales.
My deliverance didn't come as easy as it started, as the problem started.
Mi libertad no vino as fácil como pasó mi enfermedad.
It was a process that I had to go through.
Es un proceso que yo tuve de que pasar.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
But I realized at that point it was the faith that I was lacking.
Yo entendí que era la fe que no tenía.
I thought that I could do it all on my own strength.
Yo pensaba que yo lo podía hacer todo con mi
But all I
fuerza,
really needed was His strength.
pero todo lo que necesitaba era la fuerza de Él.
So I really encourage anybody who's going through something similar to what I'm going through.
Las animo si han pasado por algo que yo he pasado.
And Pastor Kevin mentioned it this past Sunday,
Y Pastor Kevin lo dijo este domingo pasado.
that we really need to have the word in front of us in our hearts and in our minds.
Tenemos que tener la palabra enfrente de nosotros, en nuestro corazón, y
One of
nuestra
my
mente.
favorite verses that I've been standing on this past year
Uno de mis escrituras favoritas que me he parado en este año.
is, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear,
Dios no nos ha dado un espíritu de temor,
but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind."
pero de un espíritu de poder, amor y entendimiento.
And I really encourage you all to find the verses that relate to your situations.
Y las animo que busquen escrituras que coinciden con lo que están pasando.
And I know it sounds super cliche,
Y yo sé que suena cliché.
but if He did it for me,
Si lo hace para mí,
He will do it for you.
lo va a hacer para ti.
And I give God all the honor and
Le doy
glory.
toda la honra y gloria a Dios.
Thank you for listening to me.
Gracias por escucharme.